Stories from Reddit. Alright, listen up, because I'm telling you, stay the hell away from Shadow Creek Lake. Seriously, don't even think about dipping your toes in that cursed water. Now. I gotta take you back to June of '06. Picture this, 2 suns glaring down on our little town. One up in the sky, doing its thing, and the other one staring right back from the lake, all bright and shimmery. Shadow Creek was our lifeblood back then, especially in the summer. Tourists flocked to it from all over the county. Hell, the fishing was legendary, some of the best in the whole damn country. We had this factory tucked away in the woods that used the lake to cool its whatever the hell they were macking. That place kept half the men in town employed, right up until some overseas conglomerate swooped in 5 years before and fired everyone. Of course, we protested. We raised hell, but what could we do? Now, the factory and a bunch of those fancy beach houses are just sitting there, rotting away on the shore. Yeah, Shadow Creek ain't exactly the paradise it used to be, but we were clinging to that image, trying to be some landlocked version of Amity Island from the Jaws movie. Crooked mayor and all. Anyway, that day, I hit the beach with my crew early, planning to stay till sunset. Wasn't too crowded yet, but we knew by noon the place would be swarming with tourists like a freaking plague of locusts. We met up by the kiosks and picnic tables. A few families were already there, kids splashing around under their parents' watchful eyes. We were all about 12, but we decided we were to call for the little kid zone. We were heading to the teen hangout, a strip of rocky beach littered with empty beer cans and cigarette butts. That didn't mean we were too old for a little fun by the pier, though. We piled onto the rickety dock, racing each other to jump into the clear water. I hung back for a minute. I kept one eye on my friends, who were doing their best impressions of drowning victims. The other eye was on Everly. She was, hands down, the hottest girl in our grade. She was sitting alone on a flat rock, not far from the water's edge. I took a deep breath and walked over. "Hey," I said, trying to sound smooth. "Hi," she replied. She was struggling with a melting soft serve cone. Most of it had turned to liquid and was running down her arm. Your ice cream's melting," I pointed out, like a total idiot. "I know," Everly said, like I was Captain Obvious. I glanced over at the ice cream truck. "Want me to buy you another one?" I asked, trying to play it cool. She beamed. "Thanks," she said, flashing a smile that could melt glaciers. I tried to return the smile, then patted my pockets. "I don't have any money," I admitted. She scrunched up her nose and laughed. I knew I was making progress. Before I could say anything else, someone called Everly's name. I turned and saw some frumpy, middle-aged woman waving her over. She stood up and turned to me. "See you later," she said, and dropped her ice cream on the ground. I watched her walk away, then went back to my friends, who were finally crawling out of the lake. At 13, I was the oldest, which automatically made me the leader. Plus, I knew a shortcut to what we called Beer Can Beach, so I led my pack of tweens away from the now bustling lakeside and into the woods. We were all hyped up on the prospect of summer vacation, a feeling stronger than any drug I've done since. We were all in shorts and slathered in sunblock, looking like a bunch of greasy seals. I remember the usual bickering, cries of wuss, and the occasional pussy thrown at the kids who didn't want to take the shortcut. But, despite their complaints, they all followed me. Turns out, I had no freaking clue where I was going. We were surrounded by trees, and had wandered so far from the lake that we couldn't even hear the water anymore. "You got us lost, dude," Tyler, my best friend, said, throwing his arms in the air. Everyone else stopped, waiting for my brilliant explanation. "We're like 2 minutes from civilization in any direction. We're not lost," I snapped back, trying to sound confident, and started walking with more determination. "Some shortcut," I heard one of the other boys mutter, as they all gave up on their little rebellion and followed me again. Soon, We heard the sound of small waves again, the tree line thinned out, and I could see the lake just beyond us. My friend's faith in my navigational skills was restored. They followed me as we came to a big rock. "It's just beyond this rock," I shouted back at them. While I knelt down to tie my shoe, a few of them tried to climb the mossy boulder. Jeremy, a ginger kid who was small even for his age, made it to the top first. As soon as he did, he let out a blood-curdling scream. "Jeremy, what's wrong?" A few of us shouted at the same time. Jeremy was on his knees, pointing. I ran over to him, and a few others followed. We climbed up behind him, and as soon as we reached the top, we saw what he was screaming about. Washed up in a little cove behind the rocks was a body, a human body. "A corpse, remains." Those were the words that raced through my head as I stared in disbelief. The rest of the crew crowded around, some having the same silent reaction I did. Others screamed. Jeremy started to cry. It wasn't long before morbid curiosity got the best of me. And I wasn't the only one. Me and a couple of others hopped down from the boulder to the edge of the little cove. Everyone was freaking out. I was too. I guess I just showed it differently. Some were trying to deny it, saying it was fake. I was gonna prove them wrong. As a test of my own manhood, I grabbed a long stick and walked over to the body. I gotta admit, I did think it could be fake for a second, because even though it looked rotten as hell, it didn't smell at all. I poked and prodded it. With the help of my stick-wielding friend, we managed to roll it onto its side a little. It looked disgusting. Absolutely putrid. There wasn't a single fly or insect on it, but its face looked like it had been eaten. The skin was slimy and white, loose fat clinging to the bloodied skull. The scalp was rotting away, looking like the worn-out knees of an old pair of jeans. Greasy black hair, mostly gone, fell to its shoulders. Its nose was just a leaking holes. One eye socket was empty. The other one held a dangling eyeball. He, I assumed it was a man, was wearing green overalls covered in dirt and grime from who knows how long in the lake. When I poked his cheek, yellows poured out. Yeah, it was real, all right, when that hit me, and the other older kids. Inspecting the body, the gravity of it really sunk in. I was looking at a dead person, a real, dead person. I dropped my stick and swore. I couldn't believe it. My friend shouted at the younger kids to get help. Help, I thought. The guy was way past needing CPR. Then, it grabbed me. Its bony hand shot out like a freaking mantis claw. It clamped onto my ankle with a death grip and used me for balance as it tried to get up. Groans came from its hollow mouth as I screamed, and everyone else screamed with me. I watched my friends bolt, leaving me to kick at my attacker. Finally, I got free. One kick shattered its remaining teeth, like dropping a cheap piece of glass. It stumbled back, almost falling, but caught itself. Once it was steady, it turned and looked at me with its dangling eye. I snapped out of my fear and turned and ran, pointlessly climbing the rock behind me when I could have just run around it. I jumped down on the other side and ran until the pain in my ankle stopped me. Once I saw signs of life up ahead, and a quick look back told me the body hadn't followed. I stopped and checked my leg. Wrapping around my shin was a white rash in the shape of a handprint. Someone called my name, and I looked up. Tyler was standing by a tree. Behind him, a crowd of concerned adults was moving slowly forward. They seemed to vary in belief on their faces correlated to who'd been told just about the discovery of a body and who heard it had moved. Still, even the disbelievers were driven forward by parental instincts and fatherly one-upmanship. Carefully, me and a few other kids followed the adults back toward the rock. My heart was pounding, and my white rash burned like hell. Still, curiosity kept me going as we returned to the rock. I watched as a hefty, sunburned dad tried to sneak past the rock, next to the water's edge, and peek into the cove. The rest of us watched as he crept around the corner, then screamed, stumbled backward, and fell into the lake. His scream set off a chain reaction. There was a collective freeze as we all waited for something to happen. But nothing did. No one came from behind the rock. And, even more worrying, the man didn't get up. I saw the adults looking at each other, silently making a plan. I watched as 3 of the equally sunburned men split off from the group and walked forward. Kids were being consoled around me, but I wasn't a kid. Not anymore. I was 13, for Christ's sake. I decided to follow the men. A few steps behind them, of course, but it made me feel important. One of them, the taller one with the thickest hair, left the group to check on the man in the water, calling his name as he went. I decided to follow him. He kicked off his flip-flops and took a few steps into the water, crouching down by the fallen man. I crouched, too, feeling the pain in my leg. Looking at my shin gave me the same sick feeling as looking over the edge of a cliff. I could see that where the rash had been was now soft, puffy skin that didn't look connected to the tissue underneath. My own worries were forgotten when the tall man screamed. His friend popped up from the water, his skin dripping like wax. All I could hear now was screaming. The men in the water, the 2 beachgoers behind the rock, and me, of course, I hobbled back as I watched the rotting man in the lake fall forward, chasing after his would-be helper. At the same time, the body from the cove ran out from behind the rocks, chasing after 2 of the parents. The body's hideous shriek, I soon realized, was a plea. Kill me. Kill me, it roared, its voice sounding like it was drowning in mud. Even with the pain shooting through me with every step, fear suppressed most of it. As the 2 walking corpses gained on me, I realized I wasn't escaping, but running into more chaos. Finally, I burst from the tree line and into the commercial area. Before my eyes could even register the carnage, I smelled the blood. It was overpowering, noxious. It covered the grass and led out in a trail over the stones, sand, and wooden dock until it mixed with the lake water. Staring at the lake, I realized I was wrong earlier. The shimmer I saw wasn't just the sun. It was a spectral shine that reminded me of a gas station puddle. It was like a dull rainbow, abused for years, being held captive below the waves. Black helicopters flew overhead as I gazed at the destruction. Dozens of people wandered the bank aimlessly, letting out animalistic cries as their bodies rotted. I saw a young mother cry as she held her decaying child. They were all still alive, suffering through every second of it. Not far from me, stumbling between the picnic benches, was a fat man with an inflatable zebra ring around his waist. He tore at his own face in agony, which came away from his skull. This scene was being repeated all around me. Men, women, and children, all with the same affliction. It felt like hell. As I stared in disbelief, something pounced on me. I was knocked to the ground, turning onto my back as I fell. As soon as I was down, my assailant dove on top of me. It was the body from the cove, now more of a skeleton, with just enough muscle and nerve tissue to keep him moving. He couldn't scream, couldn't speak. His larynx had dissolved. The remains of his face were inches from mine, dripping foul gunk onto me. His jawbone swung open. As it did, my hand finally found what it was looking for. I swung it around, bringing the stone down on the man's head. It splintered on impact, and he fell limp, slumping on top of me. With a heave, I pushed him off. His wasted body left a trail of flesh behind it. I didn't want to think of what was now on my clothes. I stood and brushed bits of bone and sinew from me, now dead. The man had no bodily functions to fight against the rot. And so, his corpse, which had curled up like a dead spider, began to liquefy. Soon, he was a puddle on the grass among a white shirt and waders. After what felt like forever, I saw Tyler being attacked by one of the rotters. Rock in hand, I started to run to his side, but stopped when I realized the decaying mass was his mother. I stopped a few yards away. Seeing someone I knew in that state was traumatizing. I couldn't imagine what it was like for Tyler. Tyler and his mother crumpled to the floor. His hands were around her neck, trying to push her away. Even from where I was standing, I could see that she was crying. It was clear she wasn't attacking him. Rather, she was trying to hug her son. I didn't know if Tyler had realized that yet, but I couldn't watch them any longer. Call me a coward, but I turned and ran. My bad leg carried me a few steps before I collapsed against a picnic table. I fell to my knees and crawled under the shelter, curling up. Finally, I looked at my wound. The puffy dead skin had rotted away, leaving slime, yellow beads of fat, and sinew. My shin bone poked through the tissue. I whimpered. The pain was too much, and it was only getting worse. My eyes were welded shut as I wept. When I opened them, I wanted it to be over. I wanted to be in bed, for all of this to have been a nightmare. I wanted the pain to stop, and when I felt an arm grab the back of my neck, I thought it would. Just not how I hoped. I was dragged from under the picnic table. Staring up, I saw my attacker wasn't a victim of the DK, but someone in a black hazmat suit. I heard a muffled swear come from his helmet when, I assumed, he noticed my wound. The cylinder he held shook with indecision. I watched as he looked around. I followed his gaze and saw his co-workers swarming the wharf, torching any screamers they found with flamethrowers. I looked up at the man towering above me in fright. Once again his attention turned to me. The last thing I saw was him raising his weapon. I woke up in a hospital bed some time later. As soon as I opened my eyes, my mother, who'd been sitting there, hugged me, careful not to yank any of the tubes. A nurse showed up, answering some alarm. She told my mother that I was still in a fragile state. Then, she began to read a set of questions from her clipboard. I answered truthfully, saying that other than a full bladder and an ache in my thigh, I was okay. She then handed me her clipboard and a pen, and instructed me to read and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Seeing no reason why I shouldn't, I signed. If I'm being honest, I thought it was about patient confidentiality like in a medical drama. She took the page back and smiled stiffly. My ears felt like they were filling up with wax after hearing what she said next. I looked at my mother, who began to cry. I didn't believe the nurse, and swung back my blanket to prove her wrong. My right leg had been amputated from above the knee. The next hour was spent with my mother and a new nurse trying to calm me down. That was 15 years ago. I don't live in Shadow Creek anymore. Nobody does. It wasn't just the lake that was affected. Anyone who drank tap water met a similar fate. To the people who swam in the lake, I still don't know what happened. I have my theories, but I knew better than to voice them. Anytime I think about it, the black van parked across the street would change my mind. Until now, you see, since I started writing this, I've heard banging on my door. And, oh God, I think I just heard it being broken down. Please, anyone who reads this, get my story out.